Hey there everybody, and welcome back to part 3 of the UPBGE tutorial series where I teach you how to use and make games with the Blender Game Engine. In the last part, and this is part 3, so there's been 2 parts so far, in the last part we made a updated movement system that actually respects rotation, and the WASD kind of is more intuitive and it works in a better way. But we can't go up and down, we can't jump, and to do that we need to talk about physics and gravity and all this kind of stuff. So that's what this tutorial is about. We're going to learn about physics, but from the perspective of making a character jump, which is actually more specific use case. So again, where we left off, if I hit P to run the game, is W and S go up and down, and then A and D let me rotate. So we have kind of a more intuitive movement system. But we have no way to go up and down on the Z axis, okay? So to do that, I want to first of all add a physics system. Why? Because when I jump, I want to come back down. Gravity should have me come back down. And it's better to have physics to do that instead of manually animating this. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to start off by making a ground plane. You can make it as big as you want. And one thing you got to know about the Blender Game Engine is by default, every single object has physics kind of enabled in a sense. So this cube, our character has physics, this plane has physics. What do I mean? Well, if we go to the physics tab, you can see we have all this logic node settings. What this means is this is a physics, not like rigid body and cloth and all this. This is physics specifically for the Blender Game Engine, and we can set all these game physics. So for the cube, I'm going to set this to be dynamic. Static means do nothing and just kind of be a wall, like a collision. Dynamic means this is a moving object, whereas the ground, I want it to be static. The moment we do that, making our cube dynamic, and we hit P, you can see when we spawn it in the game, it falls. If I start it a bit higher and hit P, you can see it falls. And that's perfect. One thing about this, and it's not really going to be relevant for this use case, but just so you know, dynamic doesn't really take care of all the niche cases, because if I rotate this and I hit P, it kind of just clips into the ground where you'd expect it to like hit the corner and all this. And you can't really do much with the collision bounds either, if that's what you're thinking. Because when you do the collision bounds, it does this very weird thing where it just touches the corner and that's it, okay? So if you want like very good physics in a sense, just know that what you do is you set this to either rigid body or soft body. Rigid body, with the combination of the collision bounds, is going to do something like this. Probably more of what you expect. And it works with our character. Now, if we were to kind of go off the grid, it's just going to fall, right? So that makes sense. Just so you know, there's also a soft body. This isn't very important for what we're doing, but if you add more geometry to this and hit P, you can now see it has more of a soft body kind of simulation, and we can still kind of control this character, although there are a couple issues. So I wouldn't recommend using soft body on your character unless you need to, in which case there's some things that we can fix. Either way, I'm going to bring down this geometry, and let's set this to be dynamic for now. If we need it to rotate, we'll set this to rigid body. So far, we have this. One thing I'm noticing is that it's falling very, very slowly, and that's because of the scale of the scene, and gravity isn't strong enough in a sense. Well, one thing we can do, very obviously, is you go to your scene settings, and just like in the physics settings, we had more. Now in the scene settings, you see there's a lot more. You can control the gravity of the game physics, you can say what game engine are you going to use, how many steps you're going to use, what's the frame rate, all kinds of things. So maybe the obvious thing to do would be to take gravity, and this is unsigned, so instead of negative 9.8, it's 9.8. You might want to like double it to 20, and that already makes it fall faster, right? If I set this to 40, then it's going to fall even faster. And there's nothing wrong with this approach, so you might be thinking, why am I not using that? This is because it's not a foolproof approach. It's basically saying the whole scene should have this amount of gravity. But what if we want some objects to be affected by gravity more or less? So we want to have more control. Not really in this case, but we'll do it anyways, just so you know. It turns out that there is a node, if we look for it, called set physics. And when you enable this, or when you import it in, it kind of looks like all our, or no, there is set physics. That is true, and that's for enabling and disabling physics. I meant set gravity. But it's the same kind of vibe. There's actually 2 of these. One of these is the one you're used to, where we reference the object, and the other one is kind of like the scene one, where we set it globally. But we have this set gravity node, and it's very familiar because we're saying set the gravity under a certain condition, we're used to that, for which object and what should the gravity vector be, okay? So this time we don't necessarily want to say on update, because if we say on every single frame set the gravity, that's very like costly. And unless we're changing the gravity on every frame, there's no point in like setting it again and again and again. I just need to set it one time when we begin. So there's actually an event for this. So under events, remember we have on update. There's also one called on init, which is on initialization, which is to say it's only going to be true. The condition is only going to be met one time, and that's when we run the game. And then it's never going to happen again, which is why you can see this has the play button. It's going to keep updating. This one does not. It's only on initialization. For the object, again, you can eyedropper pick, or you can just say pick yourself. And then we have our gravity. So now when I hit P, it's going to have low gravity again. But if I was to double this to -20, this one is signed. It's going to fall faster. And the nice thing about this is, again, it's object specific. And if you wanted to, you can actually animate the gravity over time, is another advantage. So I'm pretty happy with that. But now the question is, how do I jump, right? You might think, oh, we have this move object logic. We can just have this go up and down on the z-axis using the spacebar key. Doesn't really make sense, because when you jump, you don't say go up by some amount. What you're doing is you're applying a force, kind of in the opposite direction of gravity in this case. So when we click the spacebar, let's just add that logic. We can just duplicate this node. When spacebar is pressed, and I guess one issue of this is it doesn't necessarily update the name. And I'm sure there's a way to do it. Yeah, so you can say space pressed if you really care. But just so you know, we're going to say when the spacebar is pressed, don't go up, but add a force that is going up. So if I go to Shift A, I go to Objects, I go to Transformation, where we have all our transforms, there's also stuff like Apply Impulse and Apply Force, and there's different kind of use cases for these. I'm going to apply a force, and this is going to get at another thing that you might not expect. So when the spacebar is pressed, that is our condition. Our object, I'm going to pick ourselves using a local coordinate system, is going to have a force going upwards. So I'm going to pick 50 on the z-axis. So when I hit it, there's going to be a force upwards on the z-axis by 50. So let me run the game. We can move, and then when I hit spacebar, you can see it jumps. But it doesn't jump very high, first of all. And second of all, I can hold the spacebar key, and it will kind of just float forever, right? So I can hold spacebar, let go, hold it again. And this might be what you want. This would actually be pretty good for a Flappy Bird kind of game. Maybe we should make Flappy Bird. But you can see I can hold it down forever. Whereas what I want for this game is I can only hit jump once. No double jumping, no holding down jumping. Well, we don't really know how to tell the user to only click the spacebar once, because this is just saying if the key is down. Whereas if we do key tap, it doesn't really work the way we want it to. I mean, I guess we could try increasing the force. But this kind of has the same issue, right? So I can just keep tapping it over and over and over again. So I can't hold it, but I can tap it again and again and again. Okay? So we somehow need to say only press it every once in a while. The way we do this is I guess there's one main way. So you might look at events and say, oh, when is the value changing? And that's one way to look at it. But I think what makes a bit more sense is we're going to go to the time settings, and we're going to use a new node called Pulsify. The nice thing about Pulsify is it kind of is what it sounds like. It's a pulse. It goes once. So when I set this back to what it was, I'm going to take space pressed as our condition and then connect this in. When this is in between, what it's saying is you can only press this every gap, every 1 second, or whatever you set it to be. So now when I run this, I hit space. You can barely tell, but it is going up. But then it doesn't do it again. To make it actually go up, I'm going to obviously need a bigger force because it's not enough. So let's see. I hit spacebar. Now it's jumping. But you can see I can't hit it. I'm hitting it a bunch of times. It doesn't matter. Okay? So now it's really just a balancing act of how high you want this to go, etc. So maybe I want the gap to be less time so you can hit it a bit more often. But then the thing about that is now our jump would it go higher? let's see, make it 0.4. It wouldn't go higher, but we might be able to jump in midair, as you can see. So you got to make sure this gap is enough. Now, there are other ways to do it. You can ask, am I contacting the floor surface, yada yada, but I think this is just kind of a quick solution. So I'm going to double my force, so it jumps a bit higher. But you can see, again, I can jump multiple times in the air. So I'm going to increase the gap, and it's just this balancing act. So jump, and I can jump again, so it's slightly not enough, 1.2. Jump, slightly not enough, 1.35. So I'm just mashing the spacebar. So space, 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 space. That seems to be the magic number. So I'm jumping, jumping. So the moment I hit the ground, I can jump again, but not really like before then. Although it seems like I can like the moment before, so I'm going to do 1.4. So now what we have is we have a system where we can go around and we can jump and move around as we jump, but we can't double jump or anything like that. And the nice thing about this is we're using a physics. Again, if it feels floaty, you can change your set gravity node, but then you're also going to need to change this apply force to move accordingly. And you can totally jump off the stage and fall forever, and then you don't get it back, which we'll talk about. But since we're jumping, let's actually make a reason for us to jump. And this will actually introduce a new issue, which I will show you. But let me make a step. And the step might be a bit too high. But remember, this plane has the collision detection, right? It has physics, so we can't necessarily go through it. Now, you can kind of clip through it, and that's because we're not setting this to rigid body, but whatever. So you can see, now I can jump up and go down on the surface. Not go down on it. But I guess what I was going to say is there might be an issue with this system where if you're kind of mashing into a wall and you hit space, it's going to lose some of your momentum. But I guess the player can just get used to that. So just so you know, the reason you wouldn't want to say only jump when you're contacting the floor, which seems very logical, is because if you're touching the surface like this, you are technically touching the floor, so you could hit space a bunch of times as you're like kind of clipping this wall. So that's why you want the pulsify logic. And technically, this is like enough to make a game. So let me just make it like this. You can even round your staircases to make the interactions a bit different. And let's see what this looks like. So we started the game. And soon we'll talk about how to like position your camera so it makes a bit more sense. But we have something like that. So this is getting closer to a game with jump physics and all that. I just want to set these settings a bit differently before we continue with the next tutorial. I want gravity to be a bit more intense, so -35. This is going to make it fall a bit faster, which to me looks a bit better, but now we can't necessarily jump on top of the step. Right? It's not high enough. Quick fix, I'm going to make the jump height a bit higher, or the force, 1250. So you really just got to play with these values. And now not only are we jumping the right height, but the gravity is a bit more intense. Now, for those of you wondering, before we wrap up, why did I not use rigid body? And you totally could have. So let's actually save, go to the physics of this, and set it to rigid body, which again, if we use the collision bounds, is going to actually respect rotation and stuff like that. Let's see what this looks like. You can see the issue. So it actually looks a bit cooler, in my opinion. So if I'm going forwards and I jump, it kind of keeps the momentum, is what I'm trying to say. So, and I jump. It kind of like dives, but then the issue is it kind of rolls on its side, and then it's very weird. That is the reason I did not use rigid body. There are ways to kind of use this correctly where we're constantly orienting the vector to go upwards. So I guess one solution, just so you know, is right now we're applying force locally. We can apply it globally. So it doesn't matter which way this is oriented, it's always going to go up. But you can see it has some like weird physics. So again, if it's on its side, that's fine. We can now jump up, but now W and S might go a different direction. So that's why we're not doing that. But again, if you're wondering why, why not this, you could try to also set this to be global. I don't know if this will work, but let's try it. So W and S go like this. No, see, that's the issue. Maybe it needs to go... Now we're just playing around. Maybe it needs to go local on the movement. Let's see. Okay, so now it has this movement, and we can jump. But now it's kind of clipped into the ground. So you can kind of see the issues that this creates. So that's why we're not using rigid body. There are games where rigid body is great, but what I would recommend is if you're using rigid body, don't use apply motion. Just use physics everywhere. So let me go back to dynamic. And now we have a game that works. And you could go into all of these physics settings and say, oh, should there be damping and all this. But that is the basics of jump physics. So I'm trying to think. In the next tutorial, there's a bunch of stuff we can go over. Maybe we can have like a fall condition where we say if you fall, maybe come back. Or maybe what we can do, and I'll try to figure this out if we want to do this, maybe we can fix this clipping into the wall problem, right? And maybe we can use a version of rigid body to do that. So either way, I will see you in the next tutorial. See you there.